Okay, so Mary, firstly, thanks for taking the time to chat. Um, you're currently on the precipice of the release of your latest book, Poolroom. I was just kind of thinking about, because I know it comes out in June. Does it feel like you're in this kind of weird in between where it's gonna come out, but still just a little bit longer, but you kind of have to talk about it like a bunch, but still like maybe 6 weeks or 5 weeks?
Oh, totally. 6 weeks. Yeah. I mean, it is interesting. It's like someone asked me if it was cathartic. Like this book has taken a long time for me to write. And in some ways it's kind of like my like debut adult novel. And I've been extremely open on my newsletter as well as in unprompted and unsolicited in any conversation about how hard this book has been to write. And so friends of mine who have been so patient and who I've just um, they've been so patient because every moment I'm like, I finished a draft, and they're like, great. And then I'm like, I finished another draft, and they're like, just how many fucking drafts are you gonna do? But great. And then, when I was just like, oh, the manuscript is into the publisher, and they're like, cool. It's just like, and so now it's like, I have arcs back, and they're like, what the fuck does that mean? And so for them, it's been like, you've been coming out with this book for years, and that's how I feel. So it's as cathartic as I wrote about this on my Substack about like how it's as cathartic as barfing one kernel of corn at a time. So like it's just been this like long, protracted process of moving in book time. Like I'm so used to like instantaneous, like even in magazines where it's where I sort of come from, I guess, I'm so used to there being a lead time, but that lead time being kind of truncated and at least dedicated to like a month where I'm just like, this is the month this article will be coming out in, et cetera, et cetera. And for this, it feels so long. And in some cases it feels slow. And invariably I'm looking forward to the day it comes out. Inevitably, someone asking me, like, so what's next? And me be like, motherfucker. But yeah, like, I think that's just the process. I've been kind of out of the game for a while, but it's it's interesting. And it's also like it's weird to it feels inauspicious almost to be talking about something that is book length. Um, and being like, I think this isn't a spoiler, or da 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 da. And then also I feel like I'm talking about something that I feel a little insane. It's like I made up this thing all by myself and I'm talking about it and none of you have read it, but I'm expecting some kind of like excitement and anticipation. Meanwhile, it's a whole book and like, yeah, again, very few people have read it.
Yeah, I was about to say too, I'm also, for one thing you just said, I'm also very guilty of asking like, what's next? But when I get asked that, I'm like, this is it. Like the thing we're talking about, this is the thing. Like, but it's always a question like, you've written this book, spent years writing it. What else do you have? Um, but yeah, talking about your kind of history.
No, of course, and people want people.
Yeah, sorry, go on.
No, just people like I think it's just a way to be kind, It's like everyone stops their very busy lives just to create some space for this, like, again, wildly unsolicited creative project that you've like, you know, made material like out of like nothing. And, them being like, so what's next is almost like an invitation to be like, well, that was your 15 minutes, but here's like half a second more of my attention. So it's like, I think it's meant as a gesture of kindness. And once you've answered that with like, oh, I'm working on a new book, they're like, great. And then like they can be like, I'm finally gonna close tab on this self-important asshole and maybe like be asked a question by them or move on to any number of other topics that are like, festering away in my brain.
Well, I want to touch on like you just brought up your kind of history in magazines and publications. And you've worked for some like huge ones like Mass Appeal, Double XL, Wired, GQ. You've had two successful podcasts, Hey Cool Job and Hey Cool Life. And so just as I guess one part of this question, like what drew you towards then wanting to get into long form fiction writing? And were you able to translate anything from those experiences into writing long form fiction?
Yeah, I mean, I think your question is kind of two part. Like, I do think that there is like a stamina question and a curiosity inherent to anyone who predominantly writes, you know, like my sweet spot for a long time was like 2 to 3 thousand words. Like even a very long profile might be like 3 to 5, but largely I was writing personal essays and, those tend to be about like 2,000, 2,500 words. And I was getting, and I love the sort of rhythm of it. I love the cadence of it. I love that I know that muscle memory. And I sort of have a good instinct at this point after like 20 years of being like, oh, this is kind of like this is where the bridge is, and this is like, you know, it's like here's the hook and like all that stuff. And so there is something about writing an entire book where it's so monumental to get your arms around it. Um, and I do, I don't know if this is true for everyone, but for me, like it does become a sort of question of endurance and whether or not I can navigate through just the terrain, like the expanse of something that is as long as a book while having a sense of appreciation and focus and also perspective to know what that book looks like up close when you're sort of in the weeds with it. The other thing too is that like in writing for I've written for the joke is that I've written for every magazine, many of which don't exist anymore because media has always been an incredibly tumultuous landscape. But the thing that has been afforded me by especially being a cultural critic, like sometimes I think I kind of balk when someone is like, oh, you're a journalist. I'm like, no, war reporters and like people on the front lines, those are journalists. Like I have done red carpet reporting and have observed a lot of celebrities eating lunch. um and so, but profiling a lot of celebrities and being with them in a lot of different situations, especially being really interested in like fandoms and the cult of personality, but also like craft and also like the strange class aspects of fame where there is like a definitive upstairs downstairs and there is a sense of like what's on the record and what's off the record, and that's always been really really fascinating to me to navigate. Like you know I was one of a few of the journalists that accompanied Rihanna on the 777 plane where we were going to 7 different countries in 7 nights to see 7 back-to-back concerts. And we were just on a plane with like following Rihanna around, sometimes with Rihanna on the plane. And like, so that's just one situation. Like I've been in situations where like at the shoot, the person who we're supposed to be profiling won't get up, won't leave the bathroom. Or I've been across from tables with ingenues or like, or singers and songwriters or pop stars or actors who then went on to incredible acclaim and notoriety, and they've told me things where I explicitly told them like don't say that in front of me, and in fact if you were to say that in front of press, no, really mean that. um and I've also like stopped recording in those instances. And and so I say this to say that like I have a lot of experience thinking about fame, and obviously that is a huge aspect of Poolhouse, just because of the nature of, it's about a mother and daughter, and the mother is kind of a washed up actor, and the man who played her husband on the TV show that she was made famous for is also her lover, and he commits suicide, and the nature of the book is like what happens in the aftermath. And there is that sort of like extra bump of notoriety and celebrity that's sort of exhumed when this happens again, and this mom ends up sort of becoming relevant in a new way, which comes with its own sort of drama and tension as it relates to her daughter, who is now 20, and the daughter has always sort of felt excluded from this TV show and this family that was depicted. And so it's about grief and loss and confusion about how devastated you're allowed to feel when the man who played your mom's TV husband dies. So there's all this like complication and yeah, and like role playing and the expected sort of like the expected emotions that you might feel and how the reality of that might defy those expectations.
Well, it feels like my next question you've kind of already answered within those answers. But so I guess like when I wrote my next questions, like, were you surprised at the kind of like the immediate and sustained success you've had as an author with Emergency Contact, Permanent Record, and Yoke? But I guess to kind of reframe the question, like, did it feel immediate? Because I guess like, like a cook show, it's like, this is the one we've prepared before. From the outside, I'm
Yeah,
kind of
the
seeing,
magic of television.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm kind of, as even talking about your experiences as a cultural critic, I'm kind of seeing as from the outside all the success from the outside or your career from the outside. But has it felt immediate, your success as an author? Because I'm not seeing, I guess, like the hours, the hundreds and hundreds of hours spent making these stories. Yeah, has it felt immediate?
I mean, in some ways, I don't know. I mean, there's always kind of a schism between like what you're experiencing and what something might sort of optically look like. I don't, and then even that thing of the moment something tremendous happens to you, it sort of is always going to fall short of expectations because any sort of projection always feels like outlandish, and any sort of future, like anything you want is predicated on this idea that once you arrive there, once you get it, it will feel spectacular, and that moment won't be fleeting, or you won't have like unbelievable anxiety that that moment will pass, which it inevitably does. And in the same way that like and I'm not unique in this, tend to sort of veer towards remembering every single critique almost verbatim and glossing over any sort of like success or like congratulations or even like gratitude for having made anything. So, obviously like I'm incredibly biased, but it didn't, I feel late to everything. Like I didn't publish my first book until I was in my late 30s. Um, and so I'll see people, there's a few things. It's like I'll see someone who like comes out with a book at like 29, like they're like, "Oh, my Saturn's returning and here is my novel," or I'm just like, "Motherfucker." And then they're like, "Oh, and guess what? I had enough forethought and marketing acumen and inspiration to not only have written this book, but it's not a standalone book, it's a franchise." And I'm like, damn it. And then they're like, my next book is actually 6 books. And I'm like, mother, just it's like it's always compare and despair. And it feels incredibly hard won. Like didn't I, I didn't know that I was too afraid to admit that I wanted to be a fiction writer until I was in my late 30s. Like I'd been working on a novel for years, and my agent at the time didn't even like it when I finished it and put it in a drawer. And then someone else was like, "Hey, I'm a fan of your nonfiction writing. Is there a book you would want to write?" And I was like, I happen to have an entire book. And they read the manuscript and they eventually sold it at auction um, for a startling amount of money. And at that point, genuinely, I'm not even kidding. I was like, do I just leak this shit on Wattpad? Because honestly, like it exists. And I think I don't want it to just like I wanted to at least be read. Like that was, I think, the nature of the bar that I was hoping to clear. And so when this book actually made enough money for me to quit my job because I had like a regular, I mean, it wasn't a regular media job. I had a job then as like a culture correspondent for Vice News on HBO. Um, and so I had a great job, but I was like, fuck it, I can quit now. And so I did. And then that first novel became a New York Times bestseller. And that was stunning. And and so nothing feels fast. Like even the first job I'd been working as a writer or like yeah, I'd been working as a writer for a long time by then, like over 10 years. And so it's both fast and slow in many ways, I suppose. And then the next book came out the year following, and that was also that was optioned for a movie, and that was like another crazy auction between a bunch of different people, and so that was its own experience. And then Yoke was optioned for a TV show, and so that was also tremendous. But to date, and it's been many years after, like, and this is not unique to me at all. Like, neither that feature-length film or the TV show exists yet. And I don't know what's going to happen with either of those necessarily, but so things almost can't feel fast because things continue to happen and evolve, and within anything happening or just like it's punctuated by so many other incidents of things not happening as well. And Yoke came out during lockdown, and so I did that whole tour over Zoom. And so in some respects, that's the book that was so meaningful to me, but that I'd never really got to feel its resonance. It like in any sort of like live action feeling way, I guess. And and that book actually didn't wasn't a New York Times bestseller. So the first two were, and that one came out in COVID and wasn't. And I know why it outsold both of those books, but I also know that the spaces that were reporting to the New York Times bestseller list, um, you know, it was such a bizarre time. And like my books historically did well on like shelves at Target, for example, and Target at the time was completely filled with Lysol wipes. And so like, and I say this just to say that like I've been really, really fortunate. Um, but now that I'm moving into the adult space or the literary fiction space, like I have no expectations and I have no idea. And I don't know how I do in this space. Like I don't know if how people feel about me here. And so that's it's terrifying and I'm scared.
Um, well, I want to actually, you just brought up yoke. And I kind of want to talk about, I guess you kind of touched on the idea or the story of Poolhouse. But I guess like, and you kind of talked about a little bit about what kind of inspired it a little bit in terms of what the book's about. Um, but I just also want, I guess I want to also then reframe this question a little bit, was like, correct me if I'm wrong, but it felt like a lot of Yoke had a lot of biographical elements to it from your um
Yeah.
and then it feels like this story just feels more melodramatic and bigger and kind of dabbling in worlds like show business and like Hollywood. So I guess when I wrote the question, I wrote, what was the idea you kind of pulled to unravel the story? But I guess also adding on to that, was any of that also a reaction to how biographical Yoke was to then, for your next novel, create something that was a little bit larger than life? I guess I haven't read it yet, so I can't say for sure, but that's just how it kind of felt when I was doing my homework.
Um, no, I mean like it's interesting. Like I sometimes bristle at the notion that by dint of writing protagonists who are Korean, that like all my books have to be autobiographical. And I also really think it speaks to a lack of imagination and kind of this like sort of colonialist gaze that the moment someone isn't like some like hoary white dude, they must be mining their own biographies for fodder. Um, and this has to be about them because again, like it's that sort of gaze of oh, like this sort of gaze of like ethnography where they're just like, oh, this has to be you. Like, I don't know many like you, and I've decided to sort of collapse you into this other you that I've been reading. But in my case, maybe I lack the imagination because I'm always writing about myself. And like even Poolhouse, it's like, yeah, like I'm not like a washed up TV star. I'm just a TV star that hasn't been discovered yet. No, I mean, I I'm but I am a woman in her like mid 40s while also having a part of me that is so wounded from this like traumatic childhood, from what I now understand to be undiagnosed autism. And it was just like, I feel really like I'm like masking all the time or performing all the time or trying to read the room and feel so uncomfortable and displaced and nobody really knows me and like who is the true me, and I'm like, smash cut to like mid 40s where it's like you not only are you autistic, you've been autistic your whole life and you've been autistic in a way that isn't often legible as autistic because it's just kind of like, okay, I come from a collectivist society. I already know that like being too outlandish is seen as like being self-important or having too much ego, or like, that like Japanese saying that the nail that sticks out gets hammered down, just all this shit. So I'm just like, oh, okay. And so now I'm sort of reconciling this like 20 something person in me who I'm like rediscovering like who I've been to myself. And so in many ways, I'm not only Stevie, who is the daughter in the book, but I'm also Moon. And so I've been writing towards those things this whole time. And it's also so weird now because like the 90s and aughts when Moon was really, really visible and relevant is so spiritually, culturally, and like sartorially in right now. And so me having this sort of reckoning and like, yeah, like really like coming to terms with and coming to peace with like these two aspects of myself, these like kind of bookends of myself is what I'm writing towards. And it's been really uncomfortable. Like I'm sure it's healing or whatever the fuck, but it's so gnarly. And it's why this book was late. And then when my dad died, as I was writing this book, and as I was like increasingly understanding that it was all like that it had altered me like pretty irrevocably, that I was like, oh, I think I'm gonna start writing this book from the beginning again. And that's what I ended up doing. And that made it later, that made it more confusing. It made me feel that much more snowblind. Um, but that's what this book was and is.
Yeah, well, I guess like in that same token, like a kind of theme I've kind of picked up in your writing is kind of like you explore these dynamics between friends, lovers, family, and it's kind of these ideas of connection. Like I know a lot of stories about connection, but it feels pronounced in your stories, especially in the case of your kind of rekindling connection. Um,
Mm.
I guess in a sense, why are you kind of drawn to those dynamics or that kind of theme? Sorry.
Um,
Also, while just as a quick break, I'm on the free Zoom, so as you're answering, I'm gonna upgrade now. They only give you 40
don't
minutes. And I'm so
don't
upset.
upgrade. Don't upgrade. If you click off, send me a new link, we can start this from the beginning and you get another 40 minutes.
Okay, are you sure? Because I don't mind. I'll put the money down. Is this just like
No,
a chat?
no. I'm big onto normalizing interrupting a fucking phone call and nobody paying for Zoom.
Okay. We have 10 minutes.
Like okay, I see the clock. But like it's fine. Like
Okay.
I'm very petulant about this. I and so I mean, I don't know. It's weird. I mean, I'm sure you relate. It's like, okay, like ground level, I have a language barrier with my family, with my parents. They also have a language barrier, whether they, cop to it or not, with their native land. Like they have this sort of insular, satellite version of the world they left that's like probably like, like rose colored and like completely unrealistic and overly romanticized. And then like that weird vision in there, that watercolor vision in the mind is what I'm supposed to ascribe to when they tell me that I'm not conforming to some expectation that they have. And so the whole thing is like this like translation error that's like reverberating back and forth like with like so much fucking feedback. And so and I'm like autistic and like didn't know, and I'm obsessed with my mother, and I find it reprehensible and unforgivable that I was ever born, because I find it so violent that I ever had to leave her body in the first place. Like I could never forgive my mother for walking down the street, let alone abandoning me to becoming like an immigrant workaholic. Like, and none of this is like mature or sophisticated or original, but like, yeah, like all of that. And so I find existence to be harrowing. Like I'm not big on life. I don't like living. I don't love being here. Um, but I also know that I actually do have a lot of love in my life in all of these ways. And so it's almost this thing of like there's something about existence that feels like trying to drink from a fire hose. And I can't imagine that I'm the only person who feels this way. Like, oh, like who is more emo than a Korean person? Like, and like, who is more emo than like Asians are fucking emo, man. And like, it's weird. Like, like we're also like repressed. I mean, not to just like reduce all of us, but like we're like as repressed as fucking Protestant wasps. But, like, and I don't know where it's all supposed to go. Yeah, and then like some of us drink and some of us don't, so it's like it doesn't really like, I don't know. It's just it feels really lonely at times to be like an Asian immigrant. And again, like it feels like we're just all lonely together, like near each other, but faced away with doors closed. And like I find that so interesting. Um, and as an autistic person, I have this like, terminal exceptionalism where I'm just like, I must be alone in this. And I know I'm not. And so even that is like, I'm like, oh, you're so boring. Like, but I also no longer question or, you know, audit too deeply the fact that I basically have three things that I'm going to write about forever, which is like my fucking mom, like wanting to be beautiful and like having like really fucked up issues about that, be it my own eating disorder and yoke or like body dysmorphia that I'm going to have for the rest of my life, or just like this obsession with like status and like how that confers safety, and how it doesn't, none of this matters because we're all going to die. Like it's like I'm always just going to find these things so fascinating. And the other thing too, it's like I've written what could be seen as like romances in some ways, but none of like there is, I don't think there's a single happily ever after that like lands in a satisfactory way in any of my books, which also feels like life and also feels interesting to me and also feels like an accurate depiction of like any sort of chunk of life, which I think ultimately a book is. It's just like a little capsule of like my understanding of how things work or like yeah, I don't know, like each book when it's ready to tie off its little belly button and be like okay, it's just that's what that book was. But I'm gonna be interested in these particular things across, like I don't think my books are ever gonna have like 12 people in them or like many generations. It's never gonna be a sweeping, like I can't, I have ADHD. I can't contain that many things in my head at once.
I really loved what you just said because I've never thought about it in this way, but it's kind of true. Like, where does like all this shit go? Like, it doesn't go anywhere. Like, like you have these,
Totally.
yeah, and I never thought about it like that. And it's true. Like, I don't know, like even all the shit I deal with, some days I'm just like, who gives a shit? When I'm feeling my most
Who
like
gives a
cynical.
shit? And actually, do you even give a shit? Like that's the
Yeah,
thing. You get to a certain age and you're like, listen, you whingy motherfucker. Like this will pass, and even that gets boring. Where I'm like, okay, I'll just have to wait it out. And so like, yeah. I mean, where does it go? But also like, ugh, like
yeah,
it's maximum pain all the time. Even like the smallest thing, I'm like I have no sense of nobody has any sense of scale when it's your own life. It's just
yeah,
like, I can't believe whatever the fuck.
yeah, yeah.
Like,
It's funny. I was talking to a friend of mine, and whenever ever people ask me how I'm going, I tend to say like, I'm okay. But that's kind of interpreted as like, is something wrong? Like, and I'm just like, oh, this is
right.
because it's the same shit. Like, it's like, I don't find it
Yeah,
particularly.
you
I
you
get bored of
start
myself. Yeah,
yeah, you start saying it and you're like, yada yada, fuck it. It's like et cetera. But also, it's so funny, like how you going means you're in Australia because who the fuck else says that?
I know. Yeah, I've been called out on that by Americans. Like, what does that mean? I'm like, interpret it however you want. Like, just make it whatever.
Yeah. But
Yeah,
also I like the sort of prepositional aspect of it of like or like where you're not like doing something. It's like how are you floating through this moment? And I'm just like, yeah, like Americans are always like, it's that saying like, like just try to be a human being, not a human doing. And like Americans are incapable of that. Like we're always fucking doing.
yeah. Australia, we got like a really, like tall poppy syndrome. Like the idea of,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
we got that bad. So if you ever say you're doing too well, they're like, good for you. And even though like I
Don't
don't,
get don't get cocky.
yeah, like, bring it down. Like I don't agree with that fully, but sometimes I do. You know what? I'm like, who cares about my successes? Like, you know what? It's fine. Whatever. Let's keep it moving. Um, so I guess yeah, the last couple questions. But um, when I was reading Yoke like a couple of months ago, I was really struck by it's going to be spoiler for anyone watching about Yoke, but I was really struck by a chapter where the protagonist Jane, she goes to this meeting for people with eating disorders, and throughout the book, she feels like she's so alone in everything. But then she kind of has this kind of realization that everyone's kind of going through it. Kind of what we were talking about a little bit about before, but all different types of people. Specifically, this woman she's admired from afar, Cruella. And it made me kind of think about, I don't know why, it made me think about this kind of delineation between YA and adult fiction. How it feels like YA is sometimes put into a corner and it's only relatable to teenagers. While I think, like, I don't know, it's like, I think as you get older, sometimes you realize you haven't grown up as much as you think you do. Like, the things that still kind of haunt you from back then haunt you now. You're still processing it as an adult. And so I guess I wanted to kind of ask for you, what are the delineations between like a YA author and like a quote unquote like adult fiction author?
For me, from an authorial standpoint, nothing. I mean, a lot of people people have been like, your books are not YA. And I'm like, I know. Like I've like I've very rare I've never set a single one of my books in high school, which is kind of like the traditional domain of young adult. I've only, written about people either in college or um dropped out of college, or like out of college. And so I do think that in many ways, like the more orthodox designation of YA doesn't apply to me and has never applied to me. I think that the difference for me from an author standpoint between YA and adult is that I was more afraid of writing adult, and I had a lot more expectations and a lot more imposter syndrome and a lot more fear that I wasn't as well read as my peers, and also that like I'm not like teaching um creative writing at like some university. I don't have a master's, I don't have an MFA, like I've never been part of, you know, a workshop, let alone like I've never been part of a workshop. I don't know how to read poetry, not really. And which is not an invitation for anyone to teach me because sometimes that happens when you talk about it. And I'm like, no, I'm kind of good, thanks. Like I'll get to it. But I think that like, but if I'm honest, if I'm not being like kind of like a smart ass about it, I think that it's the difference for me is that there's shit in Poolhouse that you can learn about in your 30s and 40s. Like, just like, and I say this not to say that any 16, 17, 19, 12, 7 year old is spared any atrocity that is available to be experienced by all of us. Like, I think that it's incredibly just denigrating or patronizing or um just like I don't know, like I think that I like age has nothing to do with your capacity for feeling and the terrors and trauma that can be inflicted upon you. um I do think, I say this not like I'm not like, your forebrain is a scam, that's I'm not like a neurology truther or anything, but there is a lot more sex in this book, and I thought that, and there's a lot of like pointless sex where you're like, ugh, like, that's like some of the sex that we've all had was regrettable and like sometimes like damaging, sometimes sadistic, sometimes masochistic, sometimes, a combination of both. And, but I think as far as like, I think the pleasure in writing for adults, certainly for me, is writing about aging, like writing about body horror, writing about all the sort of ways that you can feel betrayed by your body, regardless of your age. And some of those, I think that it's funny that some of the really gnarly atrocities happen at a time where you increasingly find more grace for yourself or for love for yourself. But more specifically to what you were talking about as it relates to Yoke and Stevie, I'm a big believer of this, which is that like when I was seeking some support around my own eating disorder, my own bulimia, like I went to a 12-step group called Overeaters Anonymous, which is like the least, most laughably unglamorous name that you can give to a group of people who are so like united in their vanity and self-obsession with appearance. It's like, ugh, yuck. But interestingly, it's the group for anorexics and bulimics. It's also the same group for anyone who has struggled with like morbid obesity. There are um, sort of specialty topics within that group for people who have been hospitalized for not eating and for people who have gained and lost over 100 pounds. And I love 12 step and I love Alcoholics Anonymous, and I'm so grateful for the rubric of 12 step, not because I think like it's not like God. It's not religious, but it is spiritual and was spiritual for me, more importantly. And what was so spiritual about it for me was that I felt so disgusting. I felt like there was nothing more unholy and wasteful and also just like kind of metal and violent and perverse. It felt like a perversion that my mom was a restaurateur and I had all this resentment that she was constantly feeding other people and I was just wasting money on food that I would eat and then like throw away. And like I would disgrace myself with it as well. And and then I went into these rooms and it like 12 step is so smart because one, it's free. I've always called it free therapy. And two, it makes you do something that is so smart, which is that it makes you take a personal inventory of every wrong that you've done against all these people, real or imagined, and then you're supposed to make amends to them. And the number of times that people either remember things differently or don't remember them at all, or forgive you so easily, or don't forgive you, and that somehow feels really appropriate too. Like, or refuse to speak to you and you survive that their refusal to speak to you and you don't like wither from embarrassment and you just keep on living your life, like all of those are such a testament to the fact that like it's just this one dumb life. And similarly, there's a part in the 12 steps where you not only inventory everything that you've done but sort of like inventory the things that sort of your shortcomings or your shortfalls or the things that you struggle with most. And for me, it's like anger, it's judgment, it's like anything that sort of closes me off from other people and experiencing life and becoming like so standoffish and dissociative and like better than and like I'm too smart for this and da 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 da. And it's so great because you feel like such a shitty person for so long and you don't even know that that's what you're carrying around. And then when you really write everything down and you really sort of distill everything. It's like, oh yeah, I just have like these two or three shitty qualities and fuck around and like literally everyone I've met has these same like maybe two or three slightly different shitty qualities. And it stops us and holds us back in exactly the same ways. And like there's something so reassuring about like hearing your own story almost beat for beat, what you thought was the most like sensationally awful thing you've done. And it's like some fucking 84-year-old dude who's like, saying your story where you are like a Korean woman in your 40s, like the whole thing of it, where I'm like, this is amazing. And like all of these things that I think I won't survive. I've seen people come to a meeting on the day they buried their spouse, on the morning they lost their mother, like, and they're crying and they're snotty. And a week, like, not even a week, like 4 days later, they're literally bitching about someone who cut them off in the supermarket checkout line. And so sometimes I'm like, oh, yeah, like the worst thing happened, and you can be bothered by this. And like, I'll be there in that room when 3 years later, the person who lost their spouse like is dating again and they're complaining about that. And I'm like, oh, like this is like I will get through anything I have to deal with because I've seen other people do it. And they bitch and they moan, and I will bitch and I will moan, and we will all somehow cope. And I'm even as a professional confabulator for money, I will never ever like I am I'm just astounded by how unbelievably unoriginal we all are ultimately, not only in our motivations, but in our like shortcomings and in the worst things we think we're capable of doing. Like, like barring actual fucking Epstein monster type people, the rest of us were just kind of like huddled masses of like, yeah, like not not scumbags, not celebrities, just like some other fucking schmuck like on the bus. Like that's just most of us, and I think that that's kind of cool.
I think so too. Like, it was funny when I went to like therapy for the first time, like a couple, or maybe it was like 5 years ago or something. I kind of made up a narrative in my head about all the things that were kind of wrong with me. And so then when I told my therapist, I was like, I think A, B, C, D, E, F, G. He was like, I think it's one and two. Can we talk about that? And then afterwards, I'm like, he's like, yeah, a dozen of my clients are going through something similar. And I was like, oh, I was like, there's something,
Yeah.
there's something empowering about taking the power away from it, in a sense. Like, not,
Oh, totally.
yeah, like, yeah, it's just funny that these kind of narratives you kind of, all these things that have happened to you, but these kind of narratives you carry around. And like I am that.
Yeah.
It feels heavy. And then when you kind of talk to other people about it, it kind of like takes that weight off a little bit. My therapist does love movies,
Totally.
and so he started bringing up movie plots to try.
Movies?
Yeah, he's like, "Have you seen Babylon, Andrew? Show business." And I was like, "What?" And he explained I was paying him to spoil the movie for me. So go on. It's crazy. Yeah.
You're like, buddy, this is not your letterbox, man.
Yeah, he literally was like, you see Brad Pitt's character, he was also feeling irrelevant. I'm like, I don't see how this is fully relevant, but I just like the way you talk, so I'm gonna let you talk. But yeah, sorry, go. Sorry.
I'm gonna let you cook, my therapist.
Okay.
No, I mean, yeah, and like it really is like anything you can say, do, dream up anything. And it's just like, yeah, like take a number.
Yeah,
Like, you know,
yeah, 100%. Um, and so I guess now
totally.
these very last couple questions. It looks like throughout your career, you've been able to kind of share your stories and perspectives, kind of from this point of view as like a third culture kid. Do you feel like within media and like publishing industries that they're becoming more inclusive spaces? Like, I know it's particularly tricky with this particular time in the world, especially in America, but like, yeah, does it feel like these spaces are becoming more inclusive for voices like yourself?
Not at all. And I think what I mean by that is that like maybe I sometimes feel like no, I think it's actually it's not that it's not, it's that for every gain made over here, I think that there is this like stealthy plot to undermine this other area. And what I mean by that is that like I have been writing professionally and I have been working as like a cultural not like a critic in the strictest sense, but like I've been this sort of cultural pundit for multiple decades. And the swiftness and um, relentlessness with which I am paired almost exclusively with East Asian talent is shocking to me. And the thing is like that could be that could be enshrouded in this thing of like, it's for us, by us, it's all our voices. But actually it to me it feels like a kind of sequestering. It's like, um, why am I not the immediate go-to when it comes to interviewing Greta Gerwig? Or why wouldn't you ask me to profile, like any number, like Kate Blanchett, like, like anyone. And it's always the same handful of people. And I'm grateful for this handful of people. But at a certain point, I'm like, is my working in media predicated upon the existence of this very narrow pool of people? And then also, it comes from both sides too, because it's like the second, you start writing for the second that you as a say me, like an East Asian writer, if I were to write a book with white characters in it, or if I were to write a TV show with white characters in it, it would be seen as a betrayal by my own. And even that, I'm just like, like it or lump it, like I live in a country where I am still a minority. And so being exclusively relegated to minority things under the auspices of representation to me is still kind of like it's it's not nothing, but it can also easily be seen as a kind of reducement. And I think that that is I think it's disingenuous to not call it both. And, like there's so much rampant fascism and so much rampant racism. And I still feel like even with the sort of prevalence of like Korean culture and the visibility of it, there's a sense domestically, at least in America, where it's just like it's still you guys doing your things rather than this is a part of a larger fabric that we are all included in. Like, and so even that too, I'm just kind of like, yeah, like I still feel this all the fucking time. And I will fucking notice if, for all the people coming out with books, you're only talking to these two Asian authors because they've fucking crossed over. Like I will notice that shit. And I'm petty about that too. Like I'm writing in my book in fucking permanent marker. Like, and I will continue to.
100%. Like I
And
think, yeah,
yeah, I want it all. Like I want mainstream. I want like my people's support. I want my people's support not to get salty when I go like mainstream. And I want everything.
yeah. Like I feel like even sometimes vocalizing that, it feels like you're stepping out, like you get judged for wanting it all. But then in the
Oh
same,
yeah.
yeah, but then in the same token, if like, yeah, like even in this space, like even in Australia, if like a white person says it, they're like so ambitious, entrepreneurial. But if you say it, it's seen as being like, oh, this guy's upset. Or this person's
Yeah.
upset.
Or if I'm me, they're like, man, she's got such a spunky can-do attitude. I'm like, fuck you, motherfucker. I'm like
Yeah,
17 years older than you, and I've been
yeah,
doing this a long ass time.
yeah, 100%. Yeah, and it's like putting in the work, like in that sense, like it's hard because I guess like it can be corrosive to your everyday, but in the same token, it's like I don't want to let it go. Like, because this is my life. This means more to me than it means to you critiquing me. Like
Yeah, like I'm like exactly like I want the Viola Davis profile. Like I want the Kate Winslet profile. I don't even want to profile anyone anymore either, but I want to be offered.
yeah, yeah,
And
100%.
I want every single fucking K-pop Demon Hunter interview as well. Like I
Yeah,
want it all.
yeah,
Like
100%. Yeah,
I want it all, and still I'm like, does that even constitute a slice of the pie? Is that a sliver? Is that a crust? Is that what is that?
yeah,
Is it the part of the cream that came off on the lid? You
yeah,
know? Like
100%. Like it's so funny.
yeah.
Like I guess like for us, Yellow Belly, myself, and my career, like talking to a lot of people from like diverse backgrounds, a lot of Asians, like using a lot of like what's it called? Like a kind of sense of like camaraderie as like an entry point to an interview. But like I can ask Chris Hemsworth like his favorite spots to eat in Sydney. Like I can do that shit. Like that's easy. Like I can ask him what his four favorite films are.
Yeah.
Like I can do that shit too. Like I can do that easy.
Yeah, totally. Like, guess what? I can do it.
Yeah, that's my work. I can ask him
Yeah,
like,
and it's
yeah. So go on. So I'm just
and
going.
no, I mean it's just like it's your lack of imagination that you wouldn't ask me to talk to Chris Hemsworth.
Yeah,
And fuck you.
yeah.
Like,
Like I
yeah.
can I can ask him like what's the difference between Australian accents and American accents? I can do that shit.
Totally.
Yeah, that's my work.
Totally.
Yeah. Well, I guess you kind of touched upon it as a very last question, but we're kind of talking about like the it feels like the Hallyu waves kind of peaked, and then when I think it's about to fall, it peaks again, peaks
It
again.
peaks again.
Yeah.
Demon Hunter, I was just like, oh, we Squid Game, we're good, right? And we're like, bang, bang. And I was
Yeah.
like, damn, we weren't done. We still had to do Frozen.
Yeah.
Like we still had to like
Yeah. I didn't
we still had to go to the Oscars, we had to get Grammys, we had to get like Audrey Nuna and Tom Brown. Like we weren't done by like a long shot, and I'm so grateful for that.
yeah, I didn't realize we need to get Leo with a light stick. I'm like, all right. Like I didn't know this was just like a side. And
Yeah,
then
yeah. That was a side quest worth taking.
we had it, Big Bang playing at Coachella. Like
Yeah.
that was crazy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally, totally. Although the Coachella moment for me, wow, Billie Eilish, Justin Bieber.
Yeah. That was great.
Crying like when he picked her for Old G, I was like,
Yeah, yeah.
"Ah!"
Yeah.
Yeah, that was amazing. Ugh.
Well, I guess in the last, well, like you kind of answered the question before, but like, do you feel like, I guess then, like, yeah, like, I guess like this Hallyu wave, do you feel like it's kind of properly kind of like penetrated Western mainstream media, or do you feel like it's still kind of like othered a little bit?
It's totally, to me, it feels othered. And maybe that's a bias of like being like Korean, but living in America where and I don't even necessarily, I don't even, like, I grew up in Hong Kong. I moved here when I was 14, and then I've been living in New York, which always feels slightly sequestered from the rest of it. But like, whatever, New York's also snobbily like exceptionalist, so I don't have to go into it. But I I don't know. I feel sometimes I'm so grateful for Hallyu. I'm so grateful for having feeling like there's some sort of critical mass of like being Korean in this place. I'm so grateful that people aren't just like ching chong bing bong, like even their racisms are like a little more nuanced. You know what I mean? Where or it's like kind of like more like competitive and microaggressive where they're like, oh, like I make my shin ramen this way. And I'm like, ew, get away from me. But I also think it's like it makes people a little too like the Hollywood makes white people a little too comfortable with me. Like if they're especially if they're like a Korea boo or some shit where I'm like, oh, we're not we're not friends, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah,
Like I don't know what parasocial relationship you have with the entirety of like actual Korea, but like that's not the way to my heart. You know what I mean? Um, but also like I think it gives them that thing of like almost being too comfortable with my culture, but also like it's still incredibly otherized. It's like it's still someone being like, I think this Korean person is so hot. And I'm like, you know that empirically they are like freakishly attractive and augmented by extensive surgery. And so you discovering like some fucking Christopher Columbus shit that they're hot and then feeling the need some for some reason to tell me that and I'm supposed to like confer from this that you're not racist and you're like appreciating me in some way like the whole like weird math like 8D chess of them like proving that they're not racist like the whole thing of it is like so convoluted. And I'm not here to say it's a moral issue. I'm not here to say it's better or worse. I think it's just kind of like, I think that Hallyu does very little against white supremacy and like colonial, like, yeah, like white supremacy and like a kind of cultural hegemony of like whiteness in in everything.
yeah. No,
Like
yeah, I agree.
it's a little bit of like it's a little bit of a weird like a weird scam.
Yeah, it's like it's so much fun. Like the Hallyu wave is undeniably a good time, but it's also like I don't
Such
know,
a monoculture.
such a monocult, and the way it's kind of
Yeah.
because yeah, back in the past, my like years and years ago, I used to do like a lot of interviews with like Korean indie artists and like some K-pop artists and stuff. But the way that I would have to pitch it to like a lot of the publications run by white people I'd work with, it's almost like talking about like the kids' table, and they kind of feel safe about that, like that form of like
Oh yeah.
and like. and you kind of have to make it safe. And I kind of a little bit, I don't regret that because I was this early on in my career, but like when I look back and I'm like, I can't believe I had to do that. And that's the way it was sold. Like, I don't know, like, yeah. I know it
No,
comes.
of course. I mean, I mean, I've also written about stinky lunches. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah.
it is what it is, and like we grow in different beautiful ways. But like, yeah, like it's still kind of like a ethnographic performance.
Yes.
And it still is so anesthetized.
Yeah.
And it still is that thing. Like I was watching, Subway Takes with Kareem. Like, so I was watching one today about like colonialists. I mean, oh, expat is a racist term because these motherfuckers coming to these countries like underqualified to do local jobs and still sort of swanning in, they're called expats. But the second anyone from another country goes into like a white country, they're immigrants.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my God. And I was like, that's so fucking true. And so like I think that that is still really pervasive in like the tone with which anyone talks about K-pop even now. I'm like, why is it even K-pop? Like, why is it even K-drama? Like, these are the dramas that are like dominating globally. Like, why aren't we around here calling, you know, this American pop
Yeah.
or like English speaking pop?
Yeah.
Like aren't they just like outnumbered by now, actually?
Yeah. Like I know I used to talk before we kind of wrap up, I guess, I was talking about like I used to talk to my friends about how like so much K-pop has so much English in it now. And I think one of the things that makes K-pop unique is that it is in Korean. But I thought that would make that label drop. Like they would just penetrate mainstream music. Like Blackpink, all their solo albums pretty much in English, but it's still classified as
Yeah, this is just pop.
yeah, it's just pop at this point.
Yeah.
Like it's produced by Diplo.
Yeah.
It's like this is just pop, but it's still K-pop. And I'm like, I don't know
Yeah.
what at this point. Like I don't know what the delineation.
No, the K is because they K,
They are
like
the K. Sure.
yeah.
So, well, Mary, thank you for taking the time to chat, and thank you for also
Yeah.
taking the intermission and being so cool about the intermission. Before we go, I think in Australia too, Poolhouse comes out June 9th, I believe.
I think it comes out either June 9th. There's a UK drop that comes out, I believe, June 11th. I
Yeah,
should know this, but
yeah.
like a couple days afterwards. So, yeah, so expect it out.
I saw that the
June.
I saw that the paperback comes out June, and then the hardcover comes out like months later. Um,
Really? That's fascinating.
yeah, I'm like, I guess they got to make the hardcovers. I'm like, oh, well, I guess I'm this sick. Yeah, thank you for taking the time. Yeah.
Of course. If I'm ever in Australia, I will look you. Where are you? Are you in Melbourne or
In
Sydney
Sydney,
or
yeah,
okay.
and Sydney's like where, yeah, it's like like I think whenever people come to Sydney, they're always surprised at how diverse it is because it's so beautiful. But
Oh
like
yeah.
Sydney's like low key huge. It's kind of like a lot of people compare it to LA in that sense. Like it
Mm.
just sprawls, but everything's really far apart. So everyone kind of has to drive and stuff like that. But yeah,
So LA. Yeah.
yeah, it's pretty much LA. Yeah. Yeah. If you ever come to Sydney, let us know.
I will for sure.
Yeah. Bye.